Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today to our One Person, One Vote NPV Lunch and Learn session with League of Women Voters, Arizona. Today, our presenter is Dr. Barbara Klein. She is here to discuss the One Person, One Vote program. If you do not know me, I am Tina Malika. I am the co-president of the League of Women Voters, Northwest Maricopa County. Here to provide support is Kathy Noga, also co-president of Northwest Maricopa County, and Bonnie Jackson, our Voter Services Chair. Brief overview of what we're going to be doing today. We will do some introductory remarks, including tips for the meeting session. I will introduce our presenter. At the end of the session, we will have a Q&A. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the question and answer at the bottom of your little screen where the black bar is. The chat is closed, so just put those in there, and then we will end with some closing remarks. As I mentioned, put your questions in the Q&A tool. As the moderator, I will pose those questions to Dr. Klein during the webinar. Attendees will see only our answered questions. If there are any unanswered questions, then the advocacy team will do its best to follow up with speakers and share those responses with everyone. If you have questions that you didn't ask or you think of later, you can also contact advocacy at LWV advocacy@gmail.com, and we'll try to get those questions answered. And then finally, today's session is being recorded, and it will be available on LWVAZ's YouTube channel. So just a little bit about the League. We are 106 years old this year. We are a nonpartisan political activist grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. We neither support or oppose parties or candidates, but we do advocate on issues that align with our well-researched public policy positions. The League of Women Voters operates over 800 state and local leagues across the U.S., including all 50 states, District of Columbia, and the Virgin Islands. The Hong Kong office did recently close due to some of the political events that are going on there. These local and state groups work on grassroots initiatives to accomplish our mission, which is empowering voters, defending democracy. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. So I am very excited to introduce Dr. Barbara Klein today. Dr. Klein is a member of League of Women Voters Oregon. She is actually the vice president of the League of Women Voters Oregon and communications director. She is the action chair for LWV Rogue Valley and serves on the Oregon Action Committee. Formerly, she was state president of our own LWV Arizona, co-president of the Metro Phoenix League, and chairperson of Fair Vote Arizona, as well as a member of both LWV US task forces on the National Popular Vote and redistricting. Currently, she is a volunteer with OLLI at Southern Oregon University and often organizes and speaks on voting topics. Barbara is also a published author and runs the content blog Aging with Pizzazz. And correct me if I am wrong here, but the fitness app pizzazzee.com. I'm interested. I'm going to have to go check that out. She holds a doctorate in chiropractic, MPS in hospital and healthcare administration, RMT and music therapy, and a BS in music and special education. So thank you so much, Dr. Klein, for being here today. We are very excited to see you and hear from you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we'll give you just a minute to share your screen.
Okay, and thank you, Tina. And you already forgot to call me Barbara.
Oh, you Barbara.
So, and before I share my screen, I just want to tell everybody that this is like deja vu for me because I realized that it might be 20 years ago right now that I did my very first presentation on this issue. And I can't remember whether the first one was in Tucson or Central Yavapai, but either way, it was with us. So that's pretty nice and something I remember fondly, kind of. I also want to tell everybody that this is a kind of long presentation, so I am using notes to keep me on track. I'm sorry about that. I will try not to rustle the papers too much. And we've already discussed questions at the end, if possible, if you have something, a burning issue that you won't understand the rest of the presentation, if I don't answer, somebody can interrupt me. Um, and I know that there are experts in the room today. I realize that, but we also want to be on the same page, or for anybody who might watch this video. So I am going to make sure we get the basics as well. And I do apologize to any of the experts and ask you just to stick with me, and there we go. And just be patient. And I will now try to share my screen and hope that I don't have the same problems we were having earlier. So let's see that we're good on this. Every vote for president and vice president in the United States should be counted equal. And we know that. And unfortunately, it's not the way it is. And we say, let's change it so that it reflects the will of the people. And so we're going to start with the current electoral system. And I'm sorry if are my cameras in there? There we go. Okay. So the Constitution states that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. And there's a little bit more that it says, but what's important in this very particular part of the sentence? First, note that it is the states that have the power to determine their electors. And second, the Constitution does not determine how those electors are to cast their votes. That is up to the states. Okay. Slavery played a big part in the origins of the Electoral College, and you know this story. The Three-Fifths Compromise was to protect slavery. It was created during the 1787 Constitutional Convention, and the Southern states feared being outvoted, and they would have been, by the more populous Northern states. With the compromise, enslaved people counted as 3/5 of a person for representation, but of course, they still couldn't vote. And this boosted the Southern states' population counts for both the congressional representation and for the Electoral College. It had a significant impact on presidential elections. It gave slave-holding states disproportionate power in electing presidents. And you know, I did not realize this. 12 of the first 16 presidents were from slave-holding states. It's just been long-term consequences and ensured that the Southern political domination was there for decades. It embedded a structural inequity into the foundation of the U.S. democracy. And I do want to point out, not all of the founders were thrilled about this. It was a compromise, not a divine decree. Alexander Hamilton called it not perfect, but like the best we could do. And James Madison really wanted a direct election by the people, but again, compromised to appease the slaveholding states. And the Electoral College partly was designed to protect elite interests and not exactly what we would call a model of democracy. How does Article 2 actually play out during presidential election? Each state has authority to determine how its electors are to cast their votes. There's no constitutional requirement controlling the process. After the Constitution was adopted, there were variations in how the states would do this. And it actually wasn't until the mid-1800s when the winner-take-all systems became in wide use. In a winner-take-all state election system, all the state's electoral votes go to the candidate who wins the most popular votes in that state. not the winner of the popular vote in the nation, but in the state. Before we get into how a president is elected under the state winner-take-all system, it's important to repeat that while the U.S. Constitution allows states to appoint electors, the state winner-take-all system, again, is not in our Constitution. The system can result in a candidate winning the presidency without the most popular votes. And again, presently, 48 states and the District of Columbia work in this way with the winner-take-all system. And only Maine and Nebraska are the exceptions, and they use a congressional district system. So let's talk about how the Electoral College is comprised, and not just why. Every state is allocated a number of electors. And again, I'm sorry, I know a lot of you are very familiar with this, but we do need to share it to make sure everybody understands where we're going. Every state is elected a number of electors equal to the number of their senators plus the number of the U.S. representatives. And so in total, that's 100 senators, because we have, one for every state, plus 435 representatives and 3 electors from the District of Columbia. And I will point out that this total number for the House is actually a fixed number. And I know there's a lot of talk in the nation about changing that and increasing the House of Representatives. But right now it is fixed due to the Reapportionment Act of 1929. So that's why it doesn't change. And I also wanted to mention the thing about DC. They are the only non-state that is allotted electors. We do have other states that can vote in certain ways we can get into later if you want to know, but only Washington, D.C. gets some electors. So the president and the vice president candidates need a simple majority of the 538 electoral votes to win the election. That's 270 electoral votes to win. Now, we know how the states allotted their electors and how many of the electoral votes are needed to elect the president, but how do our votes for president get translated to electoral votes? And we're going to use Arizona as an example on this one. So, like all the other states, Arizona has 2 senators, but you have 9 representatives, so you get 11 electors. Now let's discuss some of the problems with our winner-take-all and with the Electoral College and our winner-take-all elections. Number 1, the candidate with the most popular votes may not win. 5 of our 45 presidents did not win the popular vote. And, this divergent vote undermines a president's legitimacy and ability to lead. And right now, with our country becoming more and more divided, it results in closer elections like this have the potential of reversing the Electoral College even more often, as we saw in 2016, and what was a very close call that I'll point out in a second in 2020. So, more importantly, is that 5 times in the American history, the will of the people was overridden. As the presidential candidate with most votes did not win the presidency, millions of votes were silenced. This is because our system prioritizes not the power of the people, but power of the Electoral College. And there have been even more close calls, and this is a pretty famous one you might realize in 2024 in Ohio. If there had been a shift of less than 60,000 votes, and that's not as many as it sounds, but if there had been a shift in Ohio of that many votes to Kerry from Bush, Actually, the election would have gone to John Kerry. And that's even though he lost the popular vote, or George Bush won the popular vote by more than 3 million votes. So it would have been a time when the parties were reversed, but the same thing happened, and it would not have been very fair. In the 5 recent presidential elections between 2008 and 2024, 20 states consistently voted Republican and 20 states voted Democratic. Winner depends on the outcome in the remaining battleground states, just the purple or swing states. Battleground states are highly competitive states whose winner-take-all contributions of the electoral votes have historically swung kind of back and forth. And those states do change, but they swing back and forth between the two major parties. Voters of those in spectator states are essentially immaterial to the election. They just don't matter. In 2024, there were only 7 battleground states, and you probably know this well: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. These seven states have less than 20% of the population. That means that over 80% of the country live in mere spectator states. In previous elections, there has been a similar divide going somewhere between 7 and 12 battleground states, but that number is really decreasing all the time with fewer and fewer battleground states. Now, this map shows 2 things in a way. It shows the many people who are ignored because, only visits and stuff to swing states happen. But also, it shows that fraud is much easier because in these states, which are already very close, manipulation of just 1 or 2 points in some area could win the whole state. And, I know it's been very well advertised, but in Georgia, when President Trump made his infamous call to the Georgia election official asking for 11,000 more votes, people might think, well, why does that matter? That's only 11,000 votes compared to all these millions. And it's because that's how few votes are needed in some of these states to swing things and then change what happens in the election. There are other things that could happen as well to create fraud, and I just want you to consider this, just this one. Oh, I hope we can get there. One delayed mail truck can decide the presidency, and I am coming now from a state, Oregon, that has mail-in votes only. The whole state is mail-in ballot. And this is a terrible concern of ours because they also are doing a centralized thing in the US Postal Service where I live in Southern Oregon. And if I send a card to my next door neighbor, okay, I live almost on the border with California, it goes all the way up to Portland and then back down here because they're using centralized systems. So it takes way longer for pieces of mail to get one place or the other, and that includes ballots. And I don't know if anybody saw the Supreme Court ruling this week, which is even more concerning to many of us. But the Supreme Court ruled that the Postal Service cannot be held liable for mail not delivered. So, that could be, yes, my card to my next door neighbor, but a lot more concern comes into, is my ballot going to be delivered on time? So this is just something that's a real problem and where fraud can come in with those few states. Okay, this is important for Arizona to know. In 2020, a shift of just 21,461 votes from three very important battleground states could have determined the election. Each of those votes were 329 times more important than the 7 million margin in the nationwide popular vote. Their value is determining the outcome, or their strength of it vastly outweighs all those other voters. And specifically, this shift of just 21,461 votes from Biden, if it had gone to Trump, in the three states of Arizona, Georgia, which we already mentioned, and Wisconsin, would have reversed the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. And by the way, you may sometimes hear this number referred to as like 44,000 or something like that. But that's not true. That's the total difference. This would have been the shift, and that's the only all you needed was that smaller number there as a shift. And this particular shift would have resulted in a tie in the Electoral College. And the Electoral College would have been thrown into the U.S. House of Representatives, as we understand. Trump would have won re-election because in a tie, the House picks the president on a one state, one vote basis, and Republicans controlled the majority of state delegations. So he definitely would have won the electoral college and the election if that had happened. It would have caused havoc for sure. And the point is, no matter what party this was true of, the things could have been reversed, and it would have caused havoc in our nation and what we think about in the elections. Okay. There's a unique problem happening in spectator or safe states like reliably red Texas or blue California. People in non-competitive states know their votes won't matter. In 38 to 40 states that vote reliably red or blue, people preferring the candidate of their state's minority party know their candidate won't win, so they figure, why bother voting? But you know what? Even those favoring the majority may think, why bother? She's got it. I don't have to go and vote, or I don't have to sit at my table and vote. The 2020 election saw the largest turnout in generations, yet 80 million voters in America did not vote. And NPR did a survey in November 2020 and found that of those 80 million, 16% of them thought their vote wouldn't matter. That's why they didn't vote. And it's kind of hard sometimes to argue with them. Turnout in battleground states where voters know their vote makes a difference has been 9 to 16% higher than in spectator states. And again, when they don't vote, it leads to apathy and it affects down ballot races as well. Now, this one wasn't maybe as bad as some of the gap between battleground states and spectator states, but it's still over 7%. This one was from 2024. And it just shows that if you live in a battleground state, you're more likely to vote because you have a reason to vote. In Texas, Kamala Harris received 42.5% of the vote in 2024. But those 4,835,250 blue votes did not count for the presidential race at all. Trump was benefited from the winner-take-all system. Similarly, let's look at California as an example. Over 6 million people 6,081,697 voted for Donald Trump in 2024. But those 6 million plus red votes didn't help tip the electoral vote in his favor at all. Why? Because all of California electoral votes went to Harris. Not one single electoral vote was cast for Trump, even though he won 6 million votes there. Red voters in blue states and blue voters in red states are simply irrelevant. Our third problem is that candidates and campaigns focus on battleground states, and the other states are just spectators. The number of campaign events held in 2020 and 2024 elections show the difference between swing states and states that are reliably red or blue. More than 9 out of 10 campaign events were held in battleground states. Other states, no matter if they were large states or small states, were given relatively no attention. And look at Arizona. In 2024, 20 events were held, while only 1 was held in both California and Texas, and 2 in New York, our largest states. But they didn't matter because they were reliably red or blue, and their votes just didn't matter. All the electoral votes would go to the reliable party's candidate. So, how are battleground states wooed? I mean, you can look at this, but candidates and incumbents running for re-election make promises to purple states for some wonderful federal grants and gifts, like government shipbuilding, contracts, upgraded military bases, Superfund cleanup. And it happens in both parties. So during campaigns and during these, wooing sessions, it comes from both parties, not just one. But I'm going to give you an example in 2000 campaign because everybody knew it so well. George W. Bush, during his campaign, promised seniors in then battleground state Florida that he would expand prescription drug coverage under Medicare. So then in 2003, President Bush signed the Medicare Prescription Drug Improvement and Modernization Act into law, and creating the first one for seniors in Medicare for prescription drug like that. You may like that particular example, but I do remind you that some of the benefits are lavished only on the swing states. And you may like that too, but it is not quite fair. Small states wield outsized power, and nearly all the populous states are uncompetitive and have uncontested turf. So there's 2 big disadvantages for the larger states. Remember that every state gets at least 3 electoral votes, regardless of population, 1 for each of its 2 senators, and 1 for every congressional district. So every state gets at least 3 electors. And I just want to take a look at this to see the problem in the Electoral College right now. Wyoming has 3 electors because that's the minimum. When you divide Wyoming's population by how many those 3 electors, how many people those electors represent, is 192,000. However, if you look at California's population, and granted they have more electoral votes, however, each one of those electoral votes represents 731,481 people. So the Wyoming voters have a bigger voice than those in California. And I will point out those two stats were from 2020, but the Arizona one that you see here, I got for 2026, and that was from the World Population Review. And you can see that The electoral votes, as we pointed out before, that Arizona has is 11. When you divide it by the population you're expected to have this year, your electors represent 709,000 people. So again, not nearly as big a voice as those in Wyoming. So, is our system fair? And I am going to take a break here. We are about halfway through. I'm going to take a break here to get a sip of water. And I figured you needed a little comic relief, so I'm going to share this video with you.
Well, even a third grader can see there are problems. We're going to have a little election here, and I'm going to ask you to choose between two candidates, colored pencils and markers. Who is voting for colored pencils? Okay. 10 votes for colored pencils. Who is voting for markers? 14 for markers. Markers have won the popular vote. And now we're going to have the real election. Naturally, they were disappointed. They thought we just had the election. But now it was time to work these young minds by introducing them to the Electoral College. So we broke the class into 5 tables or states. The majority at each table, either markers or colored pencils, would get the table's 1 electoral vote. Of course, in real life, states have varying amounts of electoral votes, depending on the population. Table 1's elector, how do you cast your vote?
Markers.
Table 2's elector, how do you cast your vote?
Markers.
Table 3's elector.
Colored pencils.
In the end, the whole election came down to 1 state. Table 5's elector. Angel, come on down. This is it, guys. This will decide the whole thing. Elector, how do you cast your vote?
Colored pencils.
What's that?
No cheating. Everybody should think it's unfair because it's not just about the elector's vote. It's about everybody's vote.
Aubrey, you are a rabble-rouser. I mean, clearly you're trying to whip them up into a frenzy.
It has to be fair for everybody who voted for markers, not just for a colored pencil. It's 14 to 10. It should stay that way.
This guy's a dangerous reformer. You know, it's not like this happened in real life. Oh, actually, it did.
So we saw the 5 elections where it happened so far, and obviously even kids can see this is not fair. So 1 person, 1 vote. This is how we elect almost every other office in the land. There are actually over 500,000 elected officials in the United States, but all but 1 president, well, 2, president and vice president are elected by popular vote. Maybe it's time we modernize our presidential elections and make every vote equal. It shouldn't matter what state you live in when you vote to elect the president. A direct vote would broaden the issues and concerns that candidates would have to entertain. They wouldn't be able to limit their attention to the concerns of only those few states. You know, every vote being equal would mean candidates would have to care about interests of the entire population, not just those in swing states. So why not fix the problem by abolishing the Electoral College? This is a great idea, and that is the league's ultimate goal. But abolishing the Electoral College requires a constitutional amendment. We support that. But accomplishing this task is very arduous and does take years. And I'm not going to get into a lot of how the amendments are done. We could talk about it later if you wanted. But I did want to mention that one of the possibilities of it being introduced is by a constitutional convention. And I just wanted to point out that after a long and arduous study, the League does not support a constitutional convention. So there's a solution and a way we can improve the current system without first amending the Constitution by implementing the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, usually abbreviated as NPV or NPVIC. And I'm sure I'm going to be using those abbreviations sometimes, so I apologize, but so NPV is the term. And it is an interstate compact, an agreement between states to cast their electoral votes for someone who wins the election in the entire nation, not who wins their particular state. For more than 50 years, LWV has supported, all these acronyms, LWV has supported abolishing the Electoral College, and we still do. But for 10 years, we have supported the national popular vote as a method to make every vote equal until the Electoral College is abolished. And I'm going to stop on this slide for a second. If it didn't take so much to go back and forth, I would stop sharing my screen. But I'll just leave it on this slide for a second because I wanted to tell you a little bit about Arizona history in the League that you might not know. You know, I already mentioned to you that we were doing something 20 years ago, and that was about 2006. And during that year, first of all, we met with a bunch of Arizona officials, but we co-sponsored a table at the National Convention. And in part, this was to distribute the Every Vote Equal book, which I would pick up if I was on camera, but you know, the big fat book. And it was brand new at the time, and we gave away hundreds of copies. The League didn't pay for them, but we did give away hundreds of copies. In 2008, after we got a chance to really read them all, we proposed a national study on national popular vote and championed hard to get it passed. And it did pass with lots of interest. People were really wanting a way that they thought they could improve the Electoral College or get rid of it, whichever, you know, without an amendment. I was one of the 5 people who served on the National Committee on behalf of LWV Arizona. Then in 2010, due to some discrepancy of approved questions, the study did not include the choice of supporting both the amendment and the compact. The decision was, in that case, then there was no consensus. As you know, we always like to reach consensus in our studies. But in the League for Arizona, we prepared a report which we shared with all state leagues before the convention and demonstrated how many local leagues had written to say, we support both. So in addition to the report, we proposed a concurrence with the language that we now have and that you see underlined on your screen. While there was much consternation on the convention floor, I must admit, the Arizona proposal passed with great support and has more and more support all the time. In 2012 and 2014, we continued to share the book, well, when tabling and stuff, and we held caucuses about action along with other election reforms. And I've mentioned this to other people at times. His name wasn't as well known then, but in one of our caucuses, and I don't remember which year it was on National Popular Vote, and Jamie Raskin was our featured speaker. So it was quite nice. He's, as you know, a wonderful speaker. I suspect we couldn't get him today. So I did want to share that story with you because Arizona really led the charge. Ah, yes, and the NPV plan does not call for the elimination of the Electoral College. It's always good for us to know this and repeat it. Instead, it fixes it or works with it. It doesn't eliminate it. Okay. The League of Women Voters has a long-term solution. At the June 2022 convention, a motion to make direct election of the president by popular vote, including abolishing the Electoral College by constitutional amendment and the compact, were make them a prominent listed component of the Making Democracy Work campaign. And that motion carried 794 to 81. And that led to the moonshot, which is a plan still in progress. In June 2024 convention, this priority was added to, or the moonshot was kind of morphed into one person, one vote campaign. But these were the 5 phases of our effort. You know, constitutional change is often incremental, starting with the states and then moving on. As we all know the history of the then, state-by-state victories secured women's right to vote, ultimately leading to a federal amendment. And our founder, Carrie Chapman Catt, was definitely a supporter of that. Now, state-by-state victories will ensure every vote for the president counts equally, and the amendment will follow. History didn't wait for the amendment, neither should we. And again, while it won't abolish the Electoral College, only an amendment will do that, at least it will make every vote equal. How can we quickly make the Electoral College fairer? And I guess we've already said that. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a concept that many people don't know about or don't fully understand. Remember, currently all of our state's electorals go to the winner in the state, and the NPV law would change that. When implemented in a state, implemented, not just passed into law, the law awards all the state's electoral votes to the candidate who wins the popular vote in the entire nation. Let me repeat that. Not the candidate who wins the state's popular vote, but the entire nation. As I've mentioned, the National Popular Vote is a compact, and there are many interstate compact, and there are many examples of such compacts, land boundaries and lottery agreements, and something I know people in Arizona are very well aware of, and that's the Colorado River Compact, which is going through some changes as we speak, because it timed out. So anyway, you're kind of familiar with compacts in this way. They're a legal agreement among states passing identical law. Note that this is state law, not federal law. And remember that the Constitution gives power of appointing electors to the state, so it does not usurp federal law. And then the question is, how many states are needed to pass the NPV compact? And I'm just going to give you a second to think in your head, what is the answer to that? I think hopefully you already know. We need states with a total of 270 electoral votes to pass the law, so that those 270 votes will elect the nationwide popular vote winner. The result, winner of the Electoral College and popular vote, will be one and the same. Many Americans do not support a system as it stands. They might not know the phrase winner take all, but they still know they don't like how it works, just like those kids didn't like how it works. They do support a system where a national popular vote winner is what elects a president. The Pew Research Center conducted polls in both 2023 and 2024, and they found that about 2/3 of the country support a national popular vote. And I will mention, I suspect, and this is in regard to Arizona, I suspect that this is going to be lower now due to polarization, which we can talk about afterwards. But the last Arizona poll I have data for was 2015, and it showed 78% supported a national popular vote. So again, I think it's probably less now due to some unfortunate partisan bickering, but still, it's worth noting. And again, 65% in the nation as a whole. I just added this one because I thought you might like to see it, even though it's not your state, it's Florida. But the reason I'm pointing it out was this was a poll sponsored by the League of Women Voters in Florida. So if I remember right, I think it might have cost like $7,000 or something like that. Anyway, they found very similar results. Actually, they found even more people not happy with the way things are and want a popular vote. But I am again just showing you this because it was a league-sponsored poll. So, since states have the authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to appoint their electors, they can decide or change how they do that because, again, the winner-take-all laws are not in the Constitution. And I think I mentioned this already, but it wasn't until the mid-1800s when we used that method so commonly, and Maine and Nebraska still don't. But NPVIC, again, National Popular Vote Interstate Compact legislation must be introduced and passed in enough states to secure the 270 electoral majority for the NPV to work and to stop winner take all. And I should say not just to work, but for it to even go into effect. So NPV works because of these 6 things, and I'm going to give you 1 minute just to take a look at this summary of why it works. Including the last one, that it does not require a constitutional amendment. I wonder if anybody recognizes this postcard. It's actually from Arizona. 270 is the crucial number, and I know I'm repeating myself, but remember that the NPV law is a compact, an agreement among states passing the identical law. We need enough totaling at least 270 electoral votes to pass the law so that those votes go to the popular winner, with the goal that the winner of the Electoral College and popular vote are one and the same. Oh yes, this is sad. This is what I have to show you today, but I'm going to sneak in another slide in just a second because this might have changed. As a matter of fact, as we're speaking, this might be changed. And I admit these numbers will change more as states either pass or repeal the law. So it's good to know. But right now, we have 17 states plus Washington, D.C. that have passed NPV. They represent 209 of the required 270 electoral votes, meaning only 61 more electoral votes are needed. And the slide I'm going to sneak in, which hopefully will substitute for this one later, is something that is going on as we speak in Virginia. We expect it is passed both houses. It is on the governor's desk. So We expect very soon to be able to say the legislature has passed in 18 states, 22 of the required votes, and only 48, less than 50, needed. And again, you can see the same thing here. It's been enacted into these states. And again, I changed this one too. This is what I need to say is official as of today, but I expect next week we will be able to show Virginia, whoops, with the new set of stats on that. So just a little bit more here to go. I want to talk about some myths and facts, and this anybody who has that big book I mentioned, Every Vote Equal, knows that there's one whole chapter just on myths, and it's chapter 9, and there's lots of it and facts that are just wonderful to read. Some people worry that a national vote would let big cities decide everything, leaving rural and suburban areas out. Cities are densely populated, but they only make up a portion of the population. In fact, most Americans live in suburban and smaller cities, not giant metro areas. As a quick breakdown, the top 10 biggest cities in the US make up just 8 to 10% of the total population. Rural areas matter greatly, but so do suburban and mid-sized towns like where I live. And under a national popular vote, everyone would get an equal say. Whether someone lives in a tiny town in Iowa or downtown Chicago or downtown Phoenix, their vote would amount to the same, would count the same. And that's the core idea of the whole compact, that every vote should be equal. Another myth is that small states would be ignored. And I admit this cartoon is a little out of date. Where the little blue figure is saying, yeah, see you in Florida, it should probably now say something like, see you in Arizona. But the truth is, with the current winner-take-all system, candidates already ignore small states, meaning those with 3 or 4 electoral votes. Over 90% of campaign visits go to 7 to 12 battleground states. And again, the last one was just 7. And with NPV, candidates will have to pay attention to all voters, no matter where they live, because every vote is going to count. It's hard for us to get our minds around that because we're so used to this state divide, but it would make a difference. And this illustration also shows that small states are evenly divided among the major 2 political parties. And the only reason that New Hampshire is a swing state is because it is the only one of the small states that is considered competitive. So they are ignored now. They would be much less so later. And this is one of my favorite slides, as it so clearly debunks another myth, which claims that only blue states will be disadvantaged. And usually they'll pick out, California and New York. I don't want California and New York telling me what to do. I even just saw something, a video or a movie or something recently where someone was on there and said that, But you can see that that's not the case. California and New York represent 18% of the USA. But you flip over to the other side on the very red states, 18% of those are represented by very red states. And California and New York lean 59% Democrat. The very red states lean 63% red. Then you go to the other blue states to your left, other blue states, that's about 24% of the US. And they lean 57% Democrat. And the other red states lean 57% Republican. So they are very, very balanced. And then again, you see it's only the battleground states, which are 18% or less of the population, they lean about 51% Republican. So the idea of saying that California and New York are going to control everything is really rather ridiculous. And an argument sometimes presented by opponents of a national popular vote is that Republicans can't win a popular vote. And clearly, 2024 showed that that's not the case. NPV does not skew election results for one party over the other. Okay, and on to Arizona. Arizona is in the sight of National Popular Vote organizers, and the league here can work towards this specific goal. And again, our 11, I always forget I'm not in Arizona anymore. Arizona's 11 electors would get us closer to the magic 270 number. As of the time I put this together a few days ago, this was kind of the state of NPV in Arizona, both past when it was introduced, and I do want to point out 2016 in particular, because the Arizona House, which was at the time a Republican-controlled chamber, did pass the NPV bill. There was a lot of bipartisan support during the time. It has been introduced again by reps and senators 2017, 19, 21, 23, 25, so on and so forth. But it hasn't had a hearing that I'm aware of since 2016. And I put in this year's situation right now. And I don't think it is going any further. In the Senate, it got a second reading. In the House, it got a second reading. And that was it. NPV in Arizona is being supported and opposed by national groups, not too many national groups, but it's unclear if local committees outside of the league are active. But league presentations would make a big difference. So if Arizona passes the law, when will the national popular vote winner become the president? And I think you know that. As we've said, 270 is the crucial number. With help from Arizona, the winner of the Electoral College and the popular vote could be one and the same. And that gets us closer, or what gets us closer to our goal is an integrated campaign. And I'm just going to leave these up here for a second. These strategies broadly apply to a campaign to win passage of NPV in any state. The strategies guide you along the path, and no doubt there will be twists and turns and probably setbacks that might require adjustments and refinements to your plan. You know, we've had at least one state try to repeal it and got it on the ballot to repeal, but it did not pass. But these strategies are most likely always constant. They're key tenets of a plan that you can develop specifically for your state. And I understand that Jonathan Perlow will be with you in person next month. So that's kind of a nice thing. I wished I could have been back home for a little while, but I'm glad Jonathan Perlow will be there to help on strategies and campaign ideas. And this is a quick view of a holistic, effective, integrated campaign, or what it might look like. It would be a robust ecosystem of different parts, players, pieces that speak in one voice, unified voice and work in lockstep down the path to passage of NPV. And by one voice, we mean clear, easy to understand messages that are received and understood by the audience that we need to reach, and ultimately legislators, unless it were to go on the ballot, but also their constituents and other groups. Each part of the ecosystem may be doing something different, but still contributing to the same goal. hopefully you will take this picture and graphic to the next level and start a specific practical plan for Arizona, which I think Jonathan can help you with. So, what can you do? You personally learn more about it, tell your state reps that you'd like Arizona to join, raise awareness through the community, through presentations, or even be a liaison, as Kathy and Bonnie are, from LWVAZ to NPV Working Committee. So these are some of the things. Our toolkit includes the nationalpopularvote.com website is just fantastic. It may be not that pretty, but it has all the information you could possibly want. If you go there, you can click on any particular state and find out everything that's happening. On the national website, it's a little harder to find, but there is information both just on the Electoral College, abolishing the Electoral College, but there is also our original PowerPoint, which I wouldn't encourage you to use, but our original PowerPoint on NPV. But we are willing to share these slides as well. And we really think the book, Let the People Pick the President by Jesse Wegman is a very good book that everybody should read. Even it's really common language and inspiring. And then if you want to get involved more, contact us, the steering committee, at mpvnetwork@gmail.com. And I am hoping that the League of Women Voters Arizona NPV toolkit will be coming soon. So I want to thank you for hanging in there. And now I am open to any questions.
And thank you so much, Barbara. I remember this time for
Yes, it was
presenting.
wonderful.
And thank you. I want to thank Kathy and I want to thank Bonnie for being part of that monthly. They meet monthly with the National Popular Vote group, and they are really the ones who have pushed for us to do this. It is, I can't remember, was it number 10 on our issues to start educating Arizonans and our league members about what this is? That is the first step. So I'm going to let Kathy talk in just a second. I'm going to kind of let you, because you probably have questions, but Gatel did have a question that says, what happens, like once, just trying to clarify, once it does get to 270 electoral votes, then how is it implemented?
Okay. You can think of it as this law that's sitting up on a shelf, okay, in the legislature. As soon as it reaches, it's kind of automatic. As soon as it reaches that 270 point, then the states bring it down and it's in effect. More than likely, just because of the math and stuff, it would probably be representing more than 270 votes. But anyway, if it somehow actually happened that it was 270 exactly, that's what would happen. Each state, it would automatically go into effect, if that's her question.
And my understanding is then they would, once that happens, then they just start giving all their electoral votes to the popular
vote.
Yes.
popular vote winner.
Exactly. And those more than likely, you have to remember that even in states that normally swing one way or the other way, there's such a big chunk of people that would still be supporting the popular vote that the amount of the popular vote, when you add it all together, would be probably just incredibly significant, very big.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, did you want to ask a question?
Well, I just want to make a comment. First of all, thank you very much, Barbara. This was just wonderful. And I really like the fact that you highlighted what our next steps will be and how we go about informing our public and reaching out to legislatures. And also, we really, really look forward to Jonathan Perlow joining us in April. And I hope that other leagues will send their members and have the benefit of his expertise and how he passed MPV in Connecticut.
Yep.
But
And I forgot
you.
to mention that Oregon passed MPV. So
Yes.
just in case I didn't say that, I have to get
Yes.
that in.
When was that?
2016?
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
May we
I
be
think
able to
so.
say that soon. I have a question. Well, first of all, I also want to thank you very, very much because it was a wonderful presentation. And I think anyone who was unclear as to what the goals are and what the whole program is, that's why we don't have any questions because people really understood it. But I do have one question. We have been cautioned about talking to our audiences and suggesting that they reach out to their legislators. Crossing the line where it becomes lobbying and not just, does that make,
Education versus lobbying.
yeah. And
Saying what was the first one? Education versus lobbying? Uh-huh.
because we just want to inform the public and we want them to act, but we don't tell them what to say when they reach out to their legislators. But so would we be lobbying if we said to reach out to your legislator and support?
Yes, you would be lobbying.
So we have to, what's a better way to phrase it?
Uh, I'm not sure what you mean because I mean you can lobby on this bill. It is our national position, and we are able. That's how we got it passed in Oregon. The league was vital here to get it passed, and in many other states, vital. In Virginia, which, gosh, I really wanted those new slides for today, but I'm sure they will be in next week. I mean, the league has taken a big role in most of the states that have passed this. John Cosa, who was the original founder of the organization, and by the way, now that I'm on
Show the book.
screen, I just wanted to show everybody how thick this book is, and every vote equal. Anyway, he has many times said that, the league has just been a prime player in all the states where it has passed.
Okay. Well, we just wanted to know for sure.
But it is lobbying, yes, obviously.
Well, and
But-
Barbara, you had shown a slide earlier that was showing like the 5 steps or whatever, like it starts with educating and you kind of move through those phases.
Yeah.
Actually, the first phase was not educating. The
It wasn't, okay.
phase was advocating or passing. Yeah, the first phase of the I believe the word is, I can't find it quite now, but I think the first phase is passing the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact.
So how do you do that then before you are educating your voters and your...
But don't we pass it by going out and doing our presentations and informing the public and whatever, and then having them reach
Well-
out to the legislators?
And
Exactly. Go ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
well, no, I hearing how Virginia they did it in 6 months.
Yes.
And they went out and they worked. They had a committee of people that moved from legislature to legislator, and they passed it in 6 months. So it is doable. And I think what we need to do is work on our statewide issue team, get members, and so that we can just, spread out across the state and reach our legislators and our people and educate and advocate.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I still don't see any questions. I think you did do a great job. So I think Kathy will kind of, unless I see some more questions, I do want to close out a little bit on what you were talking about with the issue team. We do have an issue team now. Kathy, Bonnie, and I are part of it. And so we would like to have members from other local leagues, join that issue team. We have a presentation that Northwest Maricopa County, similar to what Barbara's presentation was. Although yours has some more good data that we need to get
Yeah,
after
we need
ours.
to be
But we
all.
have a presentation that we've taken out to groups just to educate them on the Electoral College
Mhm.
and what the National Popular Vote Compact is. And so we would love to train our other local leagues,
Yes.
educate them on that, and have you guys do programs throughout your area as well. I also wanted to follow up on what Kathy was talking about with Jonathan Perlow. The Northwest Maricopa County annual meeting is April 18th. So it's the third Saturday of April, and our guest speaker is going to be Jonathan Perlow. So reach out if you want that information, because we, as Kathy said, we'd love to have some of the members from other local leagues come and listen to him speak. You don't have to stick around for the business meeting afterwards, but it would be good to hear him. So reach out to Kathy, Bonnie, or I if you are interested in getting some more information. Gattell is our advocacy chair, so you could reach out to her with the if you want to be on the issues team. Oh, I do see a question in there. Hang on.
I also hope that you all appreciated hearing the League of Arizona's history
Oh,
Yes.
in
Yeah.
I
being
put it
part
in the
of
chat.
this.
I did put it
Yes.
in the chat, Barbara. So
Okay.
it was wonderful. Yeah.
We do have a question. Someone asked, what about a ballot initiative? So could you maybe explain if that would or would not work and why?
You certainly can do it via ballot initiative. Personally, I think with the support that's usually shown, it would pass. You know, the problem with ballot initiatives, I think we all know today, is that they are so expensive.
Yes.
That's really the issue. I worked on another ballot issue in 2024 that ended up costing more than $10 million.
Oh.
So, I mean, I mean, that was here, not in Arizona, but nevertheless, it's concerning how expensive they've gotten. But yes, it can be a ballot initiative. And I would also, I kind of mentioned it in passing, that Colorado did put a ballot question on their ballot to repeal the National Popular Vote compact. Because one thing I didn't mention is blackout periods. A state does have the right to come out of the compact, but there is a blackout period. They can do it from, if you think of it, I always think of it, I can never remember the June date or whatever it is, but I remember it's inauguration day. So from inauguration back 6 months, in that time, a state can't pull out of the compact, but a
Can.
state cannot
Okay.
during that time. You know, it would be too political.
Mhm.
But aside from that time, a state does have the right to remove itself from the compact. That's written into the compact law. So that is the blackout period, though, that they cannot do it during that time, but they could do it at other times. And so what I was about to say, though, that Colorado tried to repeal their participation in the NPV compact, and they did put it on the ballot, and they failed quite
Mhm.
significantly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
Mhm.
Gattell, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm the vice chair of the advocacy committee. Thank you for promoting me, Tina. Just to set the record straight. So yeah, I had that. That was one of the questions that Barbara earlier, very early in the presentation, said that states could pull out, and that I was thinking about that, Barbara, when you started to talk about that just now. So there's a blackout period. So let's say we've got the 270, 70 plus, depending on the math and which states. Does that mean at any point in the future, a state can repeal that law?
Mhm.
Not at any point. But yes,
Minus the blackout.
they
Yes.
have the right,
Mhm.
it's a state issue.
Yeah,
They
yep, yep.
have the right to pull out of the compact,
Okay.
even if it was in effect at one point. They could still pull out if they wanted to, or others could join,
To join,
which we
right.
assume would happen more when people understand, hey, you really can elect the president with every vote being equal. So they can pull out, but they cannot pull out in that blackout
In that
period
blackout.
from
Okay.
inauguration day back 6 months.
Okay.
So when you say pull out, do you mean they could like pass new legislation that, okay, or they could put it on as a ballot initiative and then, or a referral and let the voters vote on it like they did in Colorado to repeal?
Oh, to repeal. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, because what I'm thinking is if it ever got passed, the majority support would be for it. So I don't think it would run a great risk if we can
Right.
get it passed originally. And I have one other question. I know how expensive it would be to do a ballot proposition or, a ballot proposition, but is it is it logical for us to think that we could maybe find enough partners that would share in the cost? Not for 10 million, but hopefully it would be a whole lot less.
Certainly. I mean, you can always find those partners if they're willing to share that cost. My hope is you won't have to, and that you will be able to work through the legislature. And it's the legislature that's really supposed to determine those votes. So it does make the most sense getting the public to buy in so that they are talking to the legislators and showing their support. I think that's a really good, cost-effective way.
Okay.
That being said, if Arizona was really close, I imagine the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact organization might be willing to help in that way. I know they don't want to do it that way, and again, would hope you wouldn't have to. But I do know that they would probably be interested, and they could help with other costs as well that weren't outrageous.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes,
Yeah.
last call for any questions. I don't see any in the box right now. Something that I'll kind of close out with here, and actually I should be sharing my screen because I have one more slide here. As you guys are talking about getting support and educating the community and getting your legislators to, pass it, I think that especially this last election, as Barbara said in her presentation, both sides have won the popular vote now. It's not a party thing. So I really feel like once people were to start seeing it, like if you could get this
Right.
270 votes, votes or 270 electoral votes for it, and people started electing that, and it started happening that way, and it was always just the person with the most votes won. I feel like it would win people over pretty quickly. I mean, that's the whole purpose that we want, is that, every vote counts, everybody's vote is equal, and whoever gets the most votes wins. And as you pointed out earlier, also, Barbara, so many other officials are elected that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great question when we're doing these presentations. Ask them, can anybody name any type of election where the candidate with the most votes does not win?
Well, actually, that is in our presentation, Bonnie.
Okay, but I was
Yeah.
thinking, sometimes questions
Yeah.
before we even start, get them thinking, and then,
Yeah.
anyway, yes.
All right, I'm gonna give everyone 30 minutes of their day back here. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. It's been an excellent presentation. Thank you again, Barbara, for spending your afternoon with us, for educating us. And if anybody on the call, like I said, is interested in more information, reach out to Gatel, to Bonnie, Kathy, or myself. We'd love to get people on the team, and we'd love to get out there in the state and explaining to the voters what this is. So
Yes.
thank you all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Have a
having
good
me.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.